Meow. Yes. Hey, I'll be right here. Kitty. Just gotta find my glasses. Where'd it go? Oh, silly me, almost. I'm almost ready. In my pocket. Alrighty. Well, here it is. 12:30 on Tuesday, July 17. And I am Bill Ray, and we're going to talk about timekeeping. So, here's some things. If you came here thinking we were going to break out metronomes and all sit around and click around the campfire, well, yeah, probably we could do that, but today is mostly going to be involved with different ways to think about how we're playing time. So everybody is different in their perception of music. Some people feel things a little bit behind the beat. Some people feel things pushing and rushing. And you're going to encounter this. If you're a working musician, especially know what I'm talking about. If you work with many different groups or, you know, an assortment of different people, kind of a gun for hire kind of thing. Different people are going to feel time differently. You're going to have, you know, like 5 different bands are going to play the same song 5 different ways. Somebody might play it a little faster, some may play it a little bit slower. And there might be someone who you really don't agree with. I'll call them back later. Sorry about that. My phone has a drum for a ringer, of course. So anyways, before I was rudely interrupted by my phone ringing there, what I'm going on to say is that people are going to feel time a lot differently. You know, some people may feel it a little more ahead of the beat. Some may feel it behind the beat. Okay, you'll have to excuse me. I had to go in for a root canal this morning, and the anesthesia is not quite worn off, and I'm a little bit loopy. And I shouldn't even be doing this right now, but I'm not going to not show up to my own party, right? Okay, so I'm sorry. Back on track here. When I'm in situations like that, and there's someone who is you know, giving me sort of, you know, they're being a little weird about the time, like, you're speeding up. Every so often I'll run into a guitarist or a bass player like that, and really the first thing out of my mouth is like, are the vocals able to, you know, do their thing over the top of this? I'll ask the singer, are you comfortable? Yeah, I'm comfortable. Okay, well, that's the end of the argument right there. Unless there's some pressing need for, you know, that absolute perfect time, you know, time is going to be somewhat of a relative concept. There's 2 kinds of timekeeping. There's absolute and there's relative. Absolute timekeeping is going to involve playing along to a mechanical source, such as a metronome or a backing track or some other time-coded, mechanically induced piece of musical input. And relative timekeeping is what we do when we're sitting down playing the drums and, you know, on a gig or even, you know, by ourselves. We're playing time that's relative to that moment. And that's kind of what music's all about, in my opinion. It's about the organic. It's organic. It should be organic. It's a living, breathing thing by living, breathing people, and when living, breathing people are doing it, I think it should live and it should breathe. As simple as that sounds. So, absolute timekeeping revolves around using a metronome. It revolves around practicing those concepts with a metronome. And I've got a metronome. It's just such a thing right here. So, let's see, where is my metronome? Be intermediate? Yeah, okay. Metronome. I use Pro Metronome. It's a great program. I'm going to give us about 65 beats a minute. How's that? Okay, I'm turning the volume way up. So, 65 beats a minute. A little bit faster than your normal second-hand clock. I like to use a second-hand clock, not with the sweeping second hand, but one that ticks, like that. That's another thing you can do. You can practice with a second-hand clock that's got the one that does like that. And if you use that as a metronome, just watching it, that's going to put you way ahead of the game as far as being able to hear with your eyes. That's in a lot of situations I end up doing just that, because either you don't have time to get a really good monitor mix, or you don't have time to really spend dialing things in, especially if it's a throw and go kind of gig. You just go and play. Well, the thing is that eye contact, let me turn it off for a sec. Eye contact is one of the most important parts about keeping time with anything. Okay, so if you're playing with a band, you need to keep your head up and look and watch everybody. And the reason why is because you're going to pick up specific cues from people. When I go onto a stage with a band that I've never played with, and I'm about to kick off the song, I'll start watching everybody and seeing which one of those people is kind of getting their groove on, for the tune. There's my tempo. It's like, who's got my tempo? Who's got my tempo? There it is. And I'm watching them doing that right there. And so I'm able to, kind of lock in with them when it comes time to count off the track. And then we're off. That's a really good thing to practice doing, is keeping your head up and your eyes open, because you'll be able to bring in a lot more information in regards to your ability to play time with the band and keep time. A lot of people think that being a drummer, that's our most important job. Yes, but you know what? It's everybody's job to keep time. Everybody's got to keep time. I can't keep your time. You got to keep your own time. If you're not keeping time, then your part's going to suck. That's just it, man. I have to work. Drummers, not just me, but drummers seem to catch an inordinate amount of grief when it comes to being, if something's wrong, it's like, I don't know what's wrong. Oh, the drummer back there is speeding everything up. Well, I actually work with some professionals, some people who've been playing, for 50-something years, and one of the things that I notice in the band is that we've got this one song, and it starts out at one tempo, and I've got live BPM. That's part of the next little segment I'm going to talk to you about. Live BPM's like a speedometer. So the song starts out at like 107 beats a minute, and then by the time we're all in, it's up to 111. And then eventually it creeps up to 115, and it sort of lives right in there. It sort of starts out at this one tempo, and then it creeps up, and then it jumps up. So the only way that we could just determine who would be the tempo creeper would be to like have me play with the guy who starts the tune and to see how well it holds, and then to have the bass player play with the guy who starts the tune and then see if it creeps up, and then all three of us play, and so we could figure out who's rushing it. But it also might be just the fact that that's just how it works. That's how the tune wants to present itself. If you listen to Honky Tonk Woman by the Stones, that song's like a roller coaster. You put a metronome against that, man, that's just crazy, going up and down. But that's the song, right? We don't notice that. We don't care about that. We're grooving on the tune. That's what matters to us. As long as there's not a track that's running behind everything that everyone's getting out of sync with, then there's really no harm in something speeding up a little bit. I mean, it's not like you're taking a test, you know? A little bit of fluctuation's fine. Come on, man, your heart beats at different rates, you know? Your pulse varies, your blood pressure varies. You know, it's all rhythm. And so, anyways, in order to become better timekeepers, working with the absolute time is going to be incredibly necessary, because you have to start somewhere. You have to get onto, you have to put some rails on it. You got to put, you know, everything on tracks in a sense, so it all drives in one direction. So when you're playing with a metronome, .65 beats a minute right there. One thing you can do is just click your sticks and try to bury the click. You get on top of it like that to where you don't even hear the click. Like that. Doing that by itself can help you to sort of settle in. Okay, so another thing that's going to help your counting, I mean your timekeeping, is counting. So when you're playing eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and whatever you're doing, counting while you're playing is going to reaffirm all those little slots. Now the way I see it is this. You know the bookshelves that have the rails on it, and you got the little clippy clips, and you got all those little slots, right? You got to go put the little clip on this, and then on the one on the back, you got to find, you know, make sure it's at the same spot, right? You got to do that, and then you do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you put the shelf onto the clips, and one's too low or one's too high, or, you know, they're all out of adjustment, it's going to wobble. It's not going to set right. So the thing is, what counting does, counting when you play music is an illustrative way. It's a way for you to illustrate all those little positions in the clip. If you're playing eighth notes with a click, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all those little spots in between right there. You become aware of that pulse. And so on and so forth. Triplets. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and that is a really good way to start developing your absolute time, because illustrating all of those rhythmic stops. It's like playing scales, is what it is. And speaking of playing scales, if you're a melodic instrumentalist, I recommend playing scales to a metronome using a rhythmic division so you can get acclimated. Okay, that's the last time I'll use my phone for this. Sorry, guys. Yeah, silly me. The root canal thing kind of whacked me out. So that's an important part of timekeeping right there, is learning to count, playing along to a metronome. Another thing I like to do, and when I walk a lot, and so instead of putting on a metronome, I'll put on some music. And I like to walk in time to the music. So when you're doing that, you're actually committing to a physical action of connecting to a pulse. And that is the same thing we do when we play music, except we're just walking with it. So one of the things is you're walking, if you're walking and if you're doing it, playing, listening to 414 or something, one of your feet's gonna land on the 2 and the 4, and one's gonna land on the 1 and the 3. So what I like to do is I like to start out walking and have my 2 and 4 on my left foot, as it would be, and 1, 2, 3, 4, playing jazz or whatever. And then I also like to do it where my 1 and 3 is on the hi-hat side, aka left foot, and my right foot is keeping the 2 and the 4. So it's switching the pattern. And as you walk along, it's going to help you get more entrenched into the pulse, because you're creating a larger physical action to that, connecting it to the music and the pulse of the music. So I think I got that from Willie Ornelius. He's a LA session drummer. He's done a lot of stuff. He was actually with Sonny and Cher. Wow, it's going back, huh? And he's also a funny guy. So that's some tips that can help you with absolute timekeeping. Another thing that you can do is to you can use the metronome and use that as instead of playing on the downbeats, we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like that. Use it as the upbeats. 1 and 3 and 4. Took me a second. Anesthetic, man. Root canal. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if you use that, or E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 1, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 3, E and a 4, E and a 1, E and a 2, 3, 4, 1. Use it on the E or the Ah even, or any other division. The idea is to be able to use that click track as a solid, like, here's like the place, like it's like a handhold in rock climbing. This click is where a downbeat goes, or where an upbeat goes, or where every time the E happens. It's where you decide to set it in relation. It's like taking the clock face and spinning it, but the hands remain the same. But instead of 12 o'clock at the top, it's like you put 12 o'clock where 1 o'clock goes. That kind of thing. It's like you just change things a little bit and change your perspective of where the top is. Okay, speaking of top, when you're playing with a click track, think about how far on top of the beat you like to be. So like, burying the click track like that. But here I'm a little bit ahead of it. A lot ahead of it. The idea is if you start practicing around the click track like that and becoming aware of the variance between the beat, you could be a little bit ahead of it, a little bit behind it, or dead on top of it. And at some point is where it's all just going to fall apart. And when it falls apart, you lose where it is. So if you could practice kind of like hanging on the very back end of it and then working on the very front end of it, then you become more comfortable around that center point where it's like the spike. You become more comfortable sitting on either side of that. And I highly recommend just playing loosely, playing as tightly as you can on the click, trying to bury it, but also let it kick your ass a little bit. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier was adjusting your inner spring. And this is the way I see it. When you're playing, when you sit down to the drums on any given day, your inner spring can be wound tight, or it can be not wound tight. It can be really loose. When it's really loose, that's the days that you feel like you can't keep up with anything. You can't get on top, you know? And when it's wound really tight, it's like you can't relax enough. You're always trying to race ahead, and you can't relax into the click. So one of the things that I have to do is I have to resort to visualizations. And something I like to do is I think about drinking NyQuil, because NyQuil makes me go, just crashes me out, right? So if I even think about drinking NyQuil, that blue, schnappy sort of like, I don't know, it tastes like Jägermeister in a way, doesn't it? It looks like Jägermeister. Anyways, if I think about drinking NyQuil or even Jägermeister, I can sort of relax myself to a point where I'm able to begin, just loosening things up, and I get on the backside of the beat. Another thing that some of the older guys I know talk about, and it's also happened to me, is like you do all the songs that you want to be like that are like sort of like the more upbeat tunes. Do those after lunch, because that way you won't go in and be all copied out and end up making it sound too rushed and pushed. Anything that you need to that's high energy, that needs to kind of lay back, it's one of those grinder things that powerful, but it's got to relax. Yeah, do that after lunch, because you'll have already eaten and you're all kind of a little bit, just a slight bit lethargic, but use that lethargy to your advantage. Don't want to do too many slow songs like that, because you can end up dragging them out. But yeah, that's another thing. What'd you eat? What'd you drink for your session? What'd you take? Did you smoke something? All those things, anything like that, any external element that you add to your stack of things to contend with, that's going to affect your ability to play time. Oh yeah. Nothing worse than somebody being in the studio and being jacked up on something, or amped up, or drunk, or something like that, and trying to get a damn take because they can't keep their freaking hand on right. So, at that point, that what was meant to be an enhancement turns out to be a hindrance. And there is the reason why it's always good to be a blank, clean slate, and find your relaxation other places other than, any kind of, place like that. But to each their own. I ain't judging. So now let's talk about relative timekeeping, yeah? Because that's what we actually spend the most time on. Relative timekeeping. So one of the things that I have to do, being that I've been doing this for so long, and hearing is one of those things where it's becoming more and more apparent that your hearing has a shelf life, and hearing loss is weird. It doesn't it's not like I can not hear anything. I can hear everything. What happens with hearing loss is that as your hearing starts to slip, it's like events, noise, sound thing, anything creating sound is like a thread hanging. So, and it's got a color. So all these colorful threads hanging out, and they're all hanging everywhere, and you can spot it, and there's the green one, there's the red one, there's the blue one, there's the purple one. Hearing loss, for me, the way it's affected me, it's like I can see all the threads, but they all are pretty much the same color. In other words, I can't see the dimension. They're all hanging in one line, and they're not in perspective. It's like everything flattens out. It becomes like this one-dimensional plane. So for me, that's what starts to happen, is I start to slip, and I start to not be able to grab certain this, that, or the other. I have to, so anyways, that, a lot of times when I'm playing, what gets me through is I'm hearing the song internally. So when I sit down and play the tune, I'm playing with the band, but I get the starting tempo and all the cues and all that from these guys because I'm watching. But really, I'm playing the song in my head, and I'm hearing it play out in my head. I'm actually seeing an outline. I'm tracing around the edge of a picture. And a lot of times my pictures end up looking like, I don't know, cartoon characters. It's really hard to say because sometimes they're just topographical maps and they look like those weather maps with all the heat things, but that's the visualizations I use in my head in order to conceptualize playing music. It's synesthesia is the technical name for it, and guess I've figured out a way to use it to my advantage. And anyways, relative timekeeping, yes, keeping an internal dialogue or keeping an internal radio happening, something that you can go along to. You have to hear it in your head. And so that's why I can sit down and play, like on my YouTube videos, like Rosanna, from end to end, because I'm hearing the song in my head. And I think that turned out to be a pretty okay version of it. I never checked it against the click track, but I mean, if somebody were to go down and lay down the music for that, I'm sure it would come out okay. It wouldn't be bad, I don't think. Oh, I'm always my own worst critic, though, so maybe it would be. So anyway, other things that can help you play relative time good, more gooder. When you're, the counting thing really helps. Having an internal hearing and playing, just flat out playing along to a click track or music online or doing session work is gonna be one of those things that brings good timekeeping practices. But I think what it is really the most is just being able to kind of sit back and relax, because if you can relax, everything kind of flows better. You're not tense. The nights that I can sit down and just play and not worry about anything, and I'm not having the stress to get it. Just the nights that I can set my gear up, walk away from it, come back a couple hours later, and sit down, and I know everything's right. Those are the cool nights. That's when it's all going to just kind of flow right out. Whenever you're on a gig and you have to hurry, you got to figure out a way to find your zen. You got to figure a way to find your happy place. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really helped me out a lot was doing that world's slowest drummer thing I did. 15 beats a minute for 30 minutes straight. What would that have been like? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I did that for 30 minutes. So it reminded me a lot of that story where the young monk goes to the monastery and he is all excited about being the newest, youngest, coolest new monk in the monastery, and says, "Hey, what you got for me to do? Anything exciting, like carving a deity or anything like that?" And the head monk looked at him and just shook his head and handed him a little tiny pair of scissors. He says, "Cut the yard." And the dude looks at the yard and it's like a freaking field. I mean, he's like, "What? Cut the yard?" And the monk's like, "You're still here?" So the guy goes out there, and I think you can read about this somewhere online. I read the story somewhere. I'll try to find it and put it in the notes. Basically, what you eventually have to do is you have to surrender yourself to that moment. You have to surrender yourself. You're not going anywhere all you've got to do is this one task, and that's to cut this field with this teeny tiny little pair of, eyebrow scissors or whatever. So what eventually happens is when you get outside of yourself, when you remove yourself and all your expectations from that moment, and you begin to clip the grass, and you begin to clip another and another and another, and realize that it's never going to be enough just to keep clipping. Just all you can do is keep clipping and keep working. And eventually, that guy figured out a system, and he would cut 1 square foot at a time, and eventually the field was all cut. And the meditation and the answer there, the message behind all that was that basically you need to get out of your own damn way in order for things to happen. And so it goes with playing music with other people and playing a song. If you get out of the way of the music and let the song play itself, it's going to do a fine job. And that's part of being a good musician, is knowing when to get out of the way of the song and letting it do its thing and take over and breathe. Because the song can breathe on its own. It's gonna sound good. It's gonna breathe, and well, you just have to get out of the way. So I'm gonna do more of these on timekeeping. I'm really sorry for today that I'm all loopy and kind of spaced out. It turns out they couldn't get me numb. And now I'm having to go back on Monday, which it's Tuesday right now, and I'm going back on Monday of next week, and we'll see about getting this thing taken care of. But yeah, thanks for bearing with me. I hope I made sense. So feel free to comment amongst yourselves, and